Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching A Healthcare Z. Today's topic is public safety net hospitals and the hidden subsidy that they provide for other hospitals. Now, what in the world is a public safety net hospital? So these are hospitals, typically they're very large and they're in very large cities, that are funded by the local taxes, in part. Now, as you can imagine, the largest public safety net hospital systems in America is in New York City. And they've got a whole bunch of hospitals across the different boroughs. Probably one of the most famous ones is Bellevue. Now, they also have LA County, or LA General Hospital, or Medical Center, if you will. Obviously huge in Los Angeles. You got San Francisco General. You've got Jackson Memorial in Miami. You've got Grady Memorial in Atlanta. You've got Cook County Hospital in Chicago. And I went to the University of Illinois Chicago for medical school, and I did part of my training at Cook County. And Cook County was where the TV show ER was fictitiously based back in the 90s. Okay, of course, Parkland here in Dallas where I am. And then in Houston, there is Ben Taub and also LBJ Hospital, and they're part of the Harris Health System, which is the public safety net hospital for Harris County, which is the county where Houston is located. And there is a fantastic new book about Ben Taub and Harris Health that's called The People's Hospital, and it's by Dr. Ricardo Nuila. And I listened to it on audiobook. If you're a healthcare nerd like me, I think you'll love it. I have no association with Dr. Nuila, but he has written a fantastic book about the essential role that Ben Taub plays for the people of Houston and Harris County. And I'm sure it's very analogous to the role that these other public safety net hospitals play in these other cities. Now note, they've got them in New York and LA and San Francisco and Chicago and Houston and Dallas, etc., but not every city has. In fact, a lot of cities don't have public safety net hospitals. Where I did my residency at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Baltimore has no public safety net hospital, okay? So just know that while they're in some large cities, they're certainly not in all of them. But listen, it is amazing what Ben Taub does for Houston and Harris County. Like, all Houstonians watching this, you should feel very proud of the type of healthcare that your local safety net hospital system provides for its people. Now, Ben Taub and Harris Health takes 56% of their patients are uninsured. Okay, listen, they take everybody, no matter what. Okay, that's one of their roles. They take everybody, no matter what. Because at the end of the day, no matter what your opinion is, we are all part of the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity. And so the wonderful people of Harris County said back in the 1960s, look, we got to do something. So they're like, we're going to take some of our property tax to then pay for this hospital system for people in Harris County. And by the way, Harris County is huge. It's got 5 million people, and it's the size of Rhode Island. Okay, so everything's bigger in Texas, right? So Harris County is big. All right, listen, so fine. Over half their patients are uninsured. 1 out of every 5 uninsured hospital admission in all of Harris County goes to Harris Health. So they're taking care of over 20% of the uninsured hospitalizations for the entire county of 5 million people. And this gets to a very interesting quote when Dr. Nuila was interviewing one of the executives at Harris Health and Ben Taub. The executive said, if we, meaning Ben Taub, go, then they, meaning the not-for-profit and for-profit hospital systems in Houston, they go. If we go, they go. Now, why is that? Well, it's because Harris Health has a $1.9 billion a year budget. That's right, their budget is almost $2 billion a year. And 46% of that budget comes from the local property tax. So if you take the $1.9 billion times the 0.46, then that gets to $875 million. Well, if Harris Health didn't exist, like if Harris Health was like Baltimore, where I did my residency, well then those 1 in 5 uninsured admits would then go to the not-for-profit hospital or to the for-profit hospitals, because HCA has a bunch of for-profit hospitals in Houston as well. So essentially, Harris Health and Ben Taub offload 1 in every 5 uninsured hospital admits from those not-for-profit and for-profit hospitals. And so essentially, the citizens, the people of Harris County, through their $875 million a year in taxes, are essentially subsidizing those not-for-profit and for-profit hospitals in Harris County because they don't have to take care of the uninsured people that Ben Taub and Harris Health are taking care of. So not only do not-for-profit hospitals not have to pay property tax themselves, but they also are getting subsidized by the taxpayers. I just thought you should know that. Now, interestingly, patients that go to Ben Taub, they still have to pay something. So unless you're a pregnant woman or you're homeless, if you're pregnant or you're homeless, you don't have to pay anything. But otherwise, you're expected to pay something. And they do it based upon your sliding scale. Do you have any income whatsoever? Do you have a part-time job? Do you have any assets whatsoever? And Dr. Nuila talks about a variety. There's all types of people that come in here. Working class people, dirt poor people, incredibly wealthy people who get into have traumatic car accidents, because believe me, Ben Taub is like the place you want to go if you get into trauma, okay? And look, and it's not just the hospital, they have an entire health, they got outpatient clinics, they got primary care clinics, they got specialty clinics, so it's a whole health system. It's not just the hospital, right? Because not all healthcare just happens in the hospital. You got to have outpatient clinics too. And so a visit is $95. An ER visit is $150. And if you have to have same-day surgery, it's $2,500. And if you have a hospital admit, it's also $2,500. And they set up payment plans, and there are people who still get health care and they don't have health insurance, okay? So I think the other thing too to note here is that these public safety net hospitals, listen, they prove that you don't have to have health insurance to get health care, okay? It's not required, okay? You don't have to have health insurance to get health care, because a lot of these people in Harris County, for a variety of reasons, do not have access to health insurance, but they're still able to get health care for things like heart attacks, for things like chronic kidney disease, for things like cancer. Now, this then gets me to the real problem for cities that do not have public safety net hospitals and instead rely on the not-for-profit and the for-profit hospitals only. And believe me, I experienced this in Baltimore. So there's this rule that I'm sure many of you are familiar with that's called EMTALA, and it passed in the 1980s. And it basically says that a hospital has to admit and take in a patient regardless of their ability to pay. It's actually referred to as the anti-patient dumping law, because back before the 1980s when this was passed, hospitals used to dump uninsured patients. They wouldn't let them in, they would let them in and then literally dump them out. And so we said, listen, here in America, we can't be dumping people on the street. So they made this rule, EMTALA, said, look, you got to, if they're sick, if they've got a heart attack, they got no insurance, they got no money, you still got to admit them. Okay, fine. But they only have to be stabilized. As soon as they are stabilized, the hospital can discharge them, and they no longer have any responsibility. So this becomes a huge problem with cancer, because a person can come in with, let's say, they have some sort of abdominal tumor. They might have colon cancer. And that colon cancer has grown to the point where it's literally blocking the ureters, the tubes that go from the kidneys to the bladder. And so they're in acute renal failure because the tumor has blocked their kidneys. They might even have a kidney infection. And so you can actually have a procedure to put in stents to open up those tubes that go from the kidneys to the bladder so that urine can pass through. And then the patient is stabilized. They can be discharged. But guess what? They still have cancer. They haven't had surgery on their cancer. They haven't had radiation on their cancer. They haven't had chemo on their cancer. And I saw this in Baltimore, where once a patient without insurance, with no money, was stabilized, they were discharged. And of course, there was no place for them to go. Nobody would take them. So what would happen? Their cancer would grow and they would come back into the hospital and they would stabilize them again and then they would discharge them. And then their cancer would grow again and then it would metastasize to their liver or their lungs. And then they'd be admitted and then they'd stabilize them again and then they'd discharge them. And then their cancer would spread to their, you get the point. And then they would eventually die. And it's horrible, okay? It is really hard. I mean, It's awful. Anybody who has ever seen this, I mean, it is heartbreaking. And obviously for the person who's going through it, it's much worse. So just know that horrible drama goes on in America every day. And at places like Ben Taub, they can actually do the surgery and cut out the tumor and set them up with an outpatient appointment and set them up with chemo and set them up with radiation so that you can actually have continuity of care. So these public safety net hospitals actually allow for a continuity of care for human beings who bleed red just like you and me, regardless of if they're rich or poor, if they have insurance or they don't. And so really, again, hats off to the taxpayers of Harris County and all the taxpayers in these towns as well. They are doing an amazing service for humanity. And these hospitals and the doctors and the nurses and the therapists that work at these hospitals are doing a wonderful service to humanity. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention today. Thank you for watching A Healthcare Z.